Hello, this is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist, with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday podcast here on September the 5th. Let's get a heat unit accumulation update, go in depth on the discussion of red crown rot, and with the recent rains, answer the question on all of our minds: was this rain helpful or was it too little too late? Now, as far as our heat unit accumulation, basing it on that May 1st planting date, boy, what a difference a week can make. In the East Lansing area, we've now accumulated 2,199 heat units. In comparison, we're actually down 39 heat units from last year, but up 4 heat units from the 5-year average. Now, going south to Coldwater, which, of course, it's also reflective of my northern Indiana and northern Ohio areas, we're 50 heat units behind last year and, boy, 20 behind the 5-year average. Now, finally, going north to the Mount Pleasant area, we are 43 heat units behind last year, but 21 ahead of the 5-year average. So, as a whole, we've fallen behind this past week, and with this cooler weather in the forecast, we'll have to wait and see. Now, as far as my travels this past week, it continues to be field day season. Boy, lots of pork chops, pulled pork, steaks. It's been enjoyed by, of course, myself and many customers across the area, and we've got a lot more events yet to come. Now, we've had some great discussions around the weather, mainly the need for some late season moisture to finish off this year's crop. Corn diseases, including tar spot or maybe the lack thereof, southern rust, northern corn leaf blight, and we've also had some discussions on our soybean challenges, such as the number of 2 bean pods versus our more normal 3 and 4 bean pods that we would normally see. And, along with that dry weather, just wondering how that's going to negatively impact harvest yields this fall, as well as, the presence of some diseases such as SDS and white mold and that red crown rot and even some brown stem rot. Now, being that red crown rot is new to our area and has now become confirmed in my northern Indiana area, I thought this might be a good time to go into just a little more depth on this new disease. Now, to be honest, the information available on this fungal disease is relatively limited so far. The biggest area of disease has been in Illinois, and it seems to be moving outward from there. As for the cause of the disease, it's caused by a fungus in the soil and, can now show signs of infection as early as that V2 growth stage. It seems to be favored by warm, moist conditions early in the growing season, and, then it starts to show those foliar symptoms similar to sudden death syndrome later in the season. As we discussed last week, the key indicators of red crown rot versus other similar diseases is the presence of the reddish brown spore, those spore producing structures at the base of the stem near the soil line, and the ability to kind of easily pull those plants out of the soil due to that rotting of the root structure of those affected plants. Now, unfortunately, there's no easy answer for eliminating this disease, but there are some things we can do to help manage its potential damage. The easiest tool out there in the toolbox is to use a good seed treatment and, consider including a product such as Saltro in the mix to specifically target diseases such as SDS and red crown rot. Now, also, anytime we can improve field drainage and keep that soil a little drier earlier in the season, we've got a better chance of reducing the negative effects of fungal pathogens that thrive in that warm, moist condition. Now, as far as selecting genetics resistant to this disease, it's going to take a little time to see how different varieties perform in its presence. I know that we do have ratings on sudden death tolerance currently in the seed guides, and it wouldn't surprise me if we can do the same for this disease in the near future. Now, for now, let's just be checking our fields for plants with that interveinal chlorosis. And, if you do suspect red crown rot, let's get some samples into the university for confirmation. Now, the other topic I wanted to address this week was about the recent rains and, whether or not they're going to help our yield potential or, was it just too little too late? Now, to answer this question, first, we need to understand that, the agronomist answer is, as always, it depends. Now, the first thing, though, it depends on is the stage of development of the crop. Now, remember that soybeans will continue to put nutrients and therefore bean size into the pod until that bean separates from the pod lining. Now, that means that, the greener the plants, the more the plants will benefit from late season rains. The soybeans that are turning yellow, they're going to benefit a little less from these rain events here recently, and eventually just not at all. Now, being that soybean yield comes from both the number of beans, which of course has already been determined, and the size of each bean, late rains can have a huge effect on soybean yield. Now, as far as corn, remember that we continue to put nutrients into our kernels up until they hit black layer, or about 32% moisture. Now, right now, most of our corn is, in that R5 or dense stage, and the milk line is starting to work its way down the kernel. And when that milk line gets to the bottom of the kernel, nearest to the cob, then that black layer forms at the tip of the kernel, and, the only thing left to do then is to dry down naturally. Now, this gives us more than a few weeks yet to hit black layer. Specifically, we need basically to gain 420 heat units to go from the start of R5 to the, which is that dent all the way down to black layer. So, for example, let's take our 100-day corn. Now, it requires 2,500 heat units to get to black layer. Now, if I planted that on May the 1st, maybe in the East Lansing area, right now I would need 301 more heat units to finish that hybrid. Now, until then, I can still take advantage of this and future rains to create more kernel depth, and more kernel weight, which is going to add to my yield potential in those fields. Now, in some areas of the state, the corn, it's already drying down due to severe drought, and boy, those plants are already brown, and some of those ears are already hanging down, and for those fields, probably no amount of rain is going to help us at this point in time. But as for the amount of rain we got this past week, most areas saw between 1/4 and 3/4 of an inch rain. Now, though we will take all the rain we can get for a little while, and then hopefully turn it off for a dry harvest, we probably didn't get enough rain to make a huge positive impact on those droughtier fields we're seeing across the area. So, there is still time to put yield in our fields, but a few more rains will be needed to really make a big difference. So, folks, as we wrap up this week's Agronomy in Action Focus Friday podcast, let's continue to get out there and walk those fields. If you're seeing interveinal chlorosis in your soybeans, pull some plants and see what's going on in your own fields. Let's all take some time, too, to maybe just pray for the right amount of rain for finishing our crops out this year. And then, of course, some nice warm and dry weather late in the fall to get this crop off and get some field work done prior to winter. This is Charles Scoble, your Golden Harvest agronomist, with your Agronomy in Action Focus Friday. Have a great week.